After 14 years in the labor movement, and with my stewardship coming to an end as new endeavors and new adventures beckon, I thought this Labor Day I would just express a few general thoughts in passing. A phenomenon which has struck me over the years is the lack of knowledge regarding the historical struggle of labor and the working class, leading to the development of the trade union movement. While the Cambole riots 1881, 1884, and the 1937 riots are well known, and perhaps to a lesser extent Bloody Tuesday 1975, most people go with the normal time-worn cliches and accepted narrative perpetuated before Labor Day, which, while accurate within itself, continues to negate the contribution of many unsung events and heroes of the working class. There are some, even among the movement, who seem to believe that 1937 happened as if by magic. Nothing existed before, and labor struggle began in 1937. It is for this reason I often reflect on some of the events which occurred before 1937, in order to allow for a more balanced look at the development of working class struggle, which was entwined with the cultural side of the working class masses. Aside from the Cambole riots, which are well documented, we must take a glance at other events as well. The 23rd of March 1903 water riots left 16 persons killed and 42 injured as a mass protest took place over new water rates and metering ordinances. The Red House itself was set on fire, and it demonstrated a people standing against perceived injustice from those in authority. The dock workers' strike of 1919 was crucial. It was a cornerstone in helping to lay the foundation for industrial action in Trinidad and Tobago. Led by the Trinidad Working Men's Association, which agitated for higher wages, an 8-hour work day, and overtime pay. On December 1st, 1919, workers attacked warehouses, attacked scab labor, and protested throughout Port of Spain. The TWA became a political force as well, seeking not only labor reform, but seeking equality among the races. People should be aware of the Jose riots of October 1884, in what historians describe as the bloodiest massacre to take place in Trinidad and Tobago under British rule. On October 30th, 1884, 22 Indians were killed and 120 other individuals were seriously injured, including women and children, in a hail of police gunfire at 2 Jose processions in San Fernando. It began when on the 30th of July 1884, the governor proclaimed a regulation prohibiting Jose processions from entering San Fernando, with a penalty of 6 months' imprisonment with hard labor and a fine of £20 imposed for those found infringing the ordinance. On Thursday, October 30th, 1884, police teams were posted at the 3 main entrances to the town of San Fernando, crossing the toll gate on Cipero Street and at the Naparima Mayaro Road junction in Monrepo. Close to noon, almost 8,000 persons celebrating Jose, made up of mostly Indians but also including persons of African descent, Muslims, Hindus, and even Christians, approached the crossing. When they were about 100 feet away, the police fired 2 volleys and random scattered shots into the crowd, which broke rank and fled the scene. They ran into the cane field, leaving 6 dead and dozens injured. At Monrepo, 2,000 plus Indians approached. The riot act was read and firing commenced, leaving 5 dead and 40 wounded. Many of the wounded were loaded into carts and taken to the colonial hospital. Some died there and were hastily buried in trenches dug at Paradise Cemetery, along with those killed in the shooting. It is believed that more than 22 died. It was the first time that such a large armed military force assembled in colonial Trinidad or in other West Indian colony at a cultural event. This was working class unity at its best. People of different races and religions banding together to ensure that one group could celebrate their heritage as they saw fit. Between the 1880s to 1917, there were actually 52 strikes and demonstrations in the sugar industry as workers demanded better treatment and better conditions of work. As far back as 1847, on the Carolina estate, an overseer was attacked for mistreating workers. In 1882, on the Cedar Hill, El Socorro and Naparima estates, major strikes took place as workers fought for their rights. And in 1890, strikes took place on the Golconda estate. In 1884 as well, strikes took place on the Mondesir estate, and in 1900 on the Harmony Hall estate. 64 workers were sentenced to 20 days imprisonment, and their leader, Daulat Singh, was actually sent back to India. In 1919, when Trinidad and Tobago was swept by a wave of strikes, sugar workers at Couva, Esperanza, Cunupia, Chagonas and Dabadi estates, down tools as well, refused to work and demanded better wages and better conditions. In July 1934, the Indian estates labor disturbances broke out in central Trinidad and quickly spread throughout the length and breadth of the sugar industry, as 15,000 sugar workers downed tools and led riots, violent protests, strikes, arson. Telephone wires were cut to disrupt communications, policemen beaten up, stores looted, and hunger marches took place in a bid to highlight their plight to those in authority. The causes of these protests were unemployment, low wages, terrible working conditions, late payment of wages, a lack of credit facilities, and a drought that made work extremely difficult. It began when 800 workers from the Birchen Castle and Esperanza estates, mainly women, went down to the warden office in Couva demanding work and food. Violence erupted. The police were attacked and dry goods stores were looted as people helped themselves to foodstuff and other commodities. 12 people were arrested. This was the spark that set the flames of protests that spread throughout Trinidad and saw riots and protests taking place in the sugar belt, from estates in North Trinidad, such as Orange Grove, to Woodford Lodge, Perseverance, Caroni, Waterloo, Savella, Phoenix Park, Cotton, Milton, Rivulet, and Forest Park estates, to name a few. In many instances, Indians attacked drivers, managers, and overseers. L.S. Dugal and A.E. Mitchell, manager and head overseer of the Esperanza estate, were attacked and seriously injured by workers. And at the Caroni Estates Limited, an overseer was injured, and the officers of the company stoned and set on fire. On the Birchen Castle estate, a driver and his son were beaten by a weeding gang. And on the Spring estate in Balmain, women workers attacked the manager with hose. The 1934 riots introduced working class radicalism into the politics of Trinidad and Tobago and into the struggle for bread and butter and work. This was then to subsequently culminate in the riots of 1937 and the Butler Oil Workers riots, which spread throughout 72 areas in the colony of Trinidad and paralyzed the country. To truly understand 1937 is to grasp that it did not happen in a vacuum, but was the culmination of working class struggle ongoing for many, many years. Today, I often feel sympathy for present-day trade unionists who are condemned for not behaving as their predecessors of the 1930s to the 1970s did. When the truth is that the circumstances were different, and workers at that time enjoyed few rights, if any at all. It was therefore easier to mobilize and motivate workers to fight for the rights they never had. Rights and privileges that workers today enjoy, and some may even say, take for granted. As a result of the trade union movement, employed persons today enjoy pension, annual vacation leave, bereavement leave, casual days, sick leave, maternity leave, minimum wages legislation, health and safety legislation, an industrial court, grievance procedures, collective agreements, and the list can go on and on. Therefore, except for individual worker issues and increased wages and legislative reform, there are hardly any employment issues from a collective perspective that trade unions can agitate for. Whereas in the past, thousands will take to the streets demanding basic rights, today trade unions often find themselves agitating alone with a few members, while the majority of workers relax, continue doing what they have to do, attend work, and simply wait for an increase in wages, which said increase is in itself dependent on many factors, more so in the private sector. And if not satisfied to the desired extent of the workers, the trade union is condemned by workers looking at cable TV or using their latest expensive cell phone, but certainly going to work the next day. Added to the sometimes unfair expectations and unreasonable comparisons with the past, the swaying power of trade union movement is no longer determined by itself, but it is often undermined by the political structure, which in Trinidad and Tobago seem to operate on the basis of, if you are not with me, you are against me, and you are one of them. Many workers sacrifice their own interests on the altar of blind political support and the race boogie. Sad to say, today, in spite of what might be claimed, trade union unity is an illusion, or for the most part a superficial platitude, meaning nothing. Most times the larger unions dictate the pace, while using the concept of trade union unity to get their own way and to ensure that smaller unions fall in line and behind them, to give the impression of strength. Collective struggle seemingly is over, except for token support. Individual unions have their own localized issues and agendas, depending on the leadership of the unions. In fact, the unity is often sacrificed on the pedestal of petty political rivalry and subjective points of view. The lack of a specific overarching philosophy or ideology, a focal point guiding the movement in both a tangible and intangible way, encourages the separation of the different entities within the movement, causing many to operate to a very large extent in silos rather than as one. In this context, it is refreshing to see the rise of the Alliance of Progressive Trade Unions, a coming together of smaller unions attempting to bring back a semblance of objectivity to the movement. Whether one agrees with them or not on specific issues, it is an escape requiring courage, yet ensuring a break from having one or two large unions act and dictate the pace as if they alone are the trade union movement. I remember in 2018 telling my colleagues that in order to make a powerful statement, all trade unionists sitting on board positions should immediately resign, shut down the boards, and force the government to speak with us. There were actually no takers, and even today, seemingly, many trade unionists see board positions as another way of getting an extra income. It is almost as if board positions are used for appeasement, support, and perhaps for some, it's almost like a job. I do think individual unions within the movement have also lost the plot and will support one or two of the major political parties interchangeably simply to ensure patronage and handouts come their way, regardless of the consequences. Again, I remember advocating the view over the years that win, lose, or draw, the movement should unite as a body, target 7 marginal constituencies, and throw the full weight of the movement behind these 7 constituencies. And if it seemed that we could cause one of the parties to win or the other to lose, somebody had to speak to us. Not surprisingly, again, there were no takers. The truth is, the more things change, the more they remain the same. The politics of race and patronage will triumph over rational logic and objectivity every time. It is simply human nature. It is impossible to change the fanatic or the fool. For the less people know, the more confident they are in their belief system and will defend it to an end in the face of all reason to the contrary. If we could honestly answer the question, if Trinidad and Tobago was one race of people, what criteria would you use to vote a political party? Then maybe, just maybe, the beginning of change may come. Sometimes I wonder if that too is too much to ask. Happy Labor Day 2026, and long live the struggle for bread and peace and justice. Long live the All Trinidad General Workers Trade Union.